Hey everyone, David C. Anderson here coming at you from the Knife Center. Welcome to Knife AQ number 46, the knife series where I answer all your questions, whether they're sharp or dull. This week, we're talking about some of our favorite premium knives, better steels to use in the outdoors, what we'd like to change about certain knives, and we've even got a special guest, Mr. Joe Flowers, coming right up. Let's get into it. As always, at the top of the video here, I'll thank you all for leaving your questions in the comments section. I always have fun going through and picking things out. If you want a chance to have one of your questions featured, just leave them down below in the comments as well. And with that, we'll get into our first question for today, which comes from Kid666. What would be your go-to machete if you had to hike through the jungle? So for me, not having any real jungle experience, the only answer I could really give is maybe something like this, which is actually an 18-inch Ontario or Old Hickory butcher knife that I modified to serve as a machete. In fact, you can see by the markings on it, I use this a lot. It's one of my primary machetes when I'm doing yard work. Convexed the blade, recurved it, added some nice micarta scales and actually contoured it. But as I said, I don't really have a lot of jungle experience, even though I'm very familiar with that tool. So we're gonna bring in someone who does have that experience, and that's Mr. Joe Flowers of Condor Tool and Knife. Hey Joe, how you doing, my friend?
Hey, how are you, DCA?
Doing great, man. Good to see you as always. Thanks for appearing on Knife AQ this weekend with us.
Awesome, thank you for having me.
But like I told our viewers, I wanted to go to someone who could really put some firsthand experience behind the answer to this question. So I'll just read it again here, and I'll kind of let you take it away. I kind of know what you're already going to say, and I have something on the table, but we'll just use that for B-roll anyway. So Kid666 asks, what would your go-to machete be if you had to hike through the jungle? Tell us, what is the tool that you would rely on for that type of situation?
That's an awesome question, because it gives us a chance to go to our foundation, to my foundation at least, like not one of my designs per se or anything, but something that I'm super depending on, that I'm used to. Kind of like, your parents' lawnmower or something, you know how to use it. It's the basic Latin style machete from multiple different companies, around 18 to 20 inches long. A bunch of different styles of handles, but I've been using that at least all my life. And I know here in America, it's a very common style, and various designs too. There's an Ontario with the same design. Here is an Essie with the same design. It's a Biota. It's something that you can find everywhere, and it can be a certain shape or a certain style, but this is the one that I depend on the most. I really like it. The 18 to 20 inch for me is a much more manageable size. There are other sizes, guys, like I have to step back, the 26 inch, which I will play with a lot, and I'll use it when I'm working crops or doing a lot of heavy machete work. Mm-hmm. But the most comfortable, at least for me personally, is the 18 to 20 inch Latin style machete with that upswept tip and that straight line down the end. It's probably the most ubiquitous machete that you would know. It's
certainly the shape that is kind of the stereotypical machete shape. You can find it just about anywhere. What is it that draws you to this? Is it like personal experience? Is it just, is it that familiarity with it? Is like the length give you like chopping or slashing advantages in certain situations?
It is. For me personally, I am always bringing this on a backpack. So that 18 to 20 inch size is easy to put on the side of a backpack. Mm-hmm. If you get longer, like these 26 inch machetes and stuff, it's sticking out, like 2.5 feet or, a little bit, from your pack. Mm-hmm. These are more compact. They're always in my car. They're always on my vehicle. Even my dad has one on his mule, on his four-wheeler. So, you'll see these everywhere. And because they're everywhere, it's just like using a hammer, guys. You know where the point is,
Mhm.
and you know how to use it. So the features are the fact that I just know it really well. It's just like your old rusted car where you know how to fix it and stuff. You know how to make it work. It's just something I'm used to.
Excellent. And I know, you're being modest too. I know the skills you have with one of these. I mean, I've seen Joe carve a spoon with it was like a 14-inch machete, but still.
Yeah, it's a working man's machete. These, and honestly, that 18-inch size, Dave, is kind of short for a lot of Latin American places, and it's
Mhm.
more of a working man's machete. But that really has its place for me because I'm always on the go. I'm not just out there working sugarcane or something with this, where I'm just working in a agricultural sense. I'm always on the move, and
Mhm.
that 18-inch style has always been something I'm used to. At least for Americans, I believe a lot of us are used to this size, so it's just something I've adapted myself to, and the style too. The point down center line. This is what people are doing, everything from fixing flat tires all the way
Mhm.
to trimming their toenails with, and it's normally this style. There are some variations, but this is most common, so it's what you know.
What one more question about it? What kind of thickness do you would be your kind of go-to for that style of
Oh,
machete for that particular task? Are you going to go? Well, you tell me.
that's a great question, because sometimes you'll see some really thick machetes, and I'm definitely part of the thick machete crowd too. But with a working machete, if it's about 3 millimeters or an eighth of an inch, with a distal taper where it's
Mhm.
thick from the back and goes all the way to the end thin, that's really really important for me. When they're 2 millimeters, like this particular version, I like that as well
Mhm.
because it can move a lot quicker. For me, the longer the machete, it's not like a sword or a katana. The longer the machete is, the more thin it is, and the more of a distal taper where it's thick here and it gets thin. The easier it is for me to use, just
Awesome.
personally.
Awesome. Very cool, dude. Awesome answers, and thank you again so much for sharing that with our people here. So I hope Joe's advice helps you out. Should be mentioned, there is something really to be said about the tools that you are familiar with. If you're familiar with something, you're going to have confidence in it to know how to use it properly, hopefully not injure yourself, that sort of thing. So even though my answer might not have been the same as Joe's, it probably still would wind up being the thing I carry just because that's what works for me. And you'll find out what works for you after trying out some things as well. So anyway, hope that helps. All right, next question comes from Nixon. I want to buy someone their first folder, but I want it to be a locking blade with a half stop. Is there such a thing, and I just can't think of one? Yes, there is such a thing. There's not many, but the one that sprung to mind almost immediately is this Kaiser. This is the Michael Galovic Slicer model, and it does have a half stop. As you can see, it's not as strong of like a half stop as a lot of slip joints out there. For example, I've got this case pruner here. You see it's got a really aggressive half stop. You don't quite get that with the slicer here, but you do have it. And the cool thing about a half stop is it kind of creates an interruption as you close the blade, which can be a passive safety measure. Makes you think about what you're doing a little bit more. And for someone's first knife, this is a little more appropriately priced than something that might be crazy expensive. It's not a cheap knife, it's about $75, and it is built very well, but it does have what you're looking for. Handles are G10. The blade steel is N690, so you've got a nice stainless option to offer them. And with a name like Slicer, you're gonna get a nice slicey blade profile as well, full flat grind. Nice crown spine, bit of a more premium feature. And the way the angle of the blade sits does work very well for some more aggressive cuts as well as some more graceful sweeping slices. Lockback at the back for protection, about 2/3 of the way back, so it's a little bit trickier to close maybe one-handed, but that's a bit of more advanced technique anyway, not something you would necessarily recommend for a beginner. And then the half stop Deep carry pocket clip, right side only. Yeah, it looks like there's screw holes here on the other side, but you don't have the milled out pocket because this clip does actually sit in a pocket with flush screws. So it works very well, very easy in and out of the pocket, and a very nice and useful design. All right, next question comes from JCR Creations. I'm getting a Bradford Guardian 4 and I plan to spend a ton of time in the bush. Should I get it in M390 or CPM 3V steel? So for me, when it comes to outdoors use specifically, I always like toughness takes on a greater importance than it does in necessarily an EDC scenario. So for that reason, me personally, I would choose the 3V because you're gonna have a tougher blade. And if you're spending time outdoors where you might be maybe abusing your knife a little bit more than it quote unquote should be, that toughness is gonna come in handy. 3V is still gonna hold an edge a good long time, but it's also going to be easier to sharpen than the M390, even though it won't hold an edge as long. Not the easiest to sharpen with like improvised rocks and that sort of thing, so I would bring sharpening materials with you. But this is that Guardian 4, this one right here, 3V blade coming in about 203 with a wood handle in this case. They call it G wood, so it's actually similar to like things like diamond wood and that sort of thing, where it's a little more stable than your natural wood. I would also say for outdoors use especially, but any kind of heavier use, be careful with a knife design like this because you know the primary grip here behind that big choil is only part of the grip. The choil actually comprises part of that primary grip, and you do have a sharp edge here ground through to the back edge of that choil, so do be careful when using a design like this, but the Bradfords are built exceptionally well. All right, now we've got a question for Seth and myself to answer, so we're gonna bring Seth V, our social media manager, back in for this particular segment. In fact, he's right over there in his little apartment. You ready to come on out?
Oh, bright in here.
Are you napping?
A little sleepy.
I shut the door. You heathen. You ready for our segment?
Absolutely.
I like this question. This one's a lot of fun too. All right, hey DCA and Seth. Matt Clark asks, what folder would you recommend around the $500 price point? Something EDC friendly and unmistakably looks and feels high end. It's a good question. But I'm going to make it harder for us, and we talked about this because the easy answer and the correct answer is Chris Reeve Sebenza, but it's too easy. Like that'd be a boring segment. So caveat is no Sebenza, but buy a Sebenza if you like, because that's a perfectly good answer. All right, so we each have one, and we're each going to try and guess what the other person picked. This one's tough to metagame and try to figure out what I think you got. But I'm gonna say, is it something from Olamic?
It is.
That's the closest I've ever gotten.
You want to try to narrow it down even more?
No, I do not.
Okay. All right. Well, we can count that as correct.
I get partial credit, I think.
I picked the Olamic Wayfarer. Yeah, I think I've talked about this with you before, but I do think that for the money, and it is kind of crazy to talk about a $500 knife as having
being a value. Yeah.
But for the money, Olamic offers a really good value. So what Olamic does that I really like is almost every single one of their knives is unique. It's different from every one of their other knives. Little details, the finish work, slightly different from knife to knife. They do brilliant anodizing. You know, they'll hand carve the scales and the back spacer.
May I?
Yeah.
It's such a cool knife. It really is.
Yeah, the blade steel's premium. You know, every little
M390 on this one.
I think it's M390.
What's this guy come in at? Where are we around that $500?
$495.
$495, right in there.
Olamic knives start in like the 400s and go up from there all the way to 700, 800.
Way up. Yeah. I mean, over 1,000, I think, in a lot of, or in some cases.
Yeah, for your really exotic materials and such. But
that's cool. That's a good one.
This is a nice sweet spot for him, and the design is excellent too. It's a little large for EDC for me, but I know a lot of people really like that size of EDC knife.
Yeah,
about 3.5-inch blade.
Leans into the tactical aspect just a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay.
But it looks and feels very, very premium.
And you got stuff like that floating back spacer along there, the chamfering, but it leaves the spot for the what's the word? Screws, right
Screws,
there.
yeah.
Just nice details. Yeah, yeah.
Lots of details to get lost in.
Not too ostentatious either.
And if you buy this one, you're going to be the only person with this exact configuration, which is kind of cool. That's kind of one of the things you get with a more expensive knife is some uniqueness, some just for you.
Some amount of exclusivity.
Yeah.
Usually not this exclusive if this is the only one of these, but
yeah, that's kind of where the value comes in. But
very cool. All right, I dig it. Good choice. Good choice.
Cool.
All right, now for me.
Okay, for you,
It's gonna be tough.
maybe I'll ask you the same question you asked me. Is the knife you picked made by Lion Steel?
It is not.
Ooh.
Were you gonna say the DPX Aculus?
Yes, that integral flipper.
The reason I wouldn't pick that is it's essentially based on the tie spine, which can be had for like $300 or $200 to $300. So it's more like a slightly fancier, flippery version of that. So I wouldn't pick that for that reason.
Ooh. That was my guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, don't look at the screen because I always forget the name of this because I just love the shape. The Cheburkov small Swift.
Very nice.
Yeah. You know, I was kind of thinking along the lines of Sebenza in a way, just the classic good-looking lines of that knife, very clean and refined. So for me, just in my head, it was a little too out there, something like that. But that's just personal preference. But I love this knife. I was actually afraid you were going to pick this knife, or one of the variants of it. This particular one is about $465. There's Damascus bladed ones that hit right around that $500 mark. There's titanium handled versions. But I picked the carbon fiber over the titanium ones because it's less flat. There's some contouring to the handles on this guy. And I mean, EDC friendly to its very core.
Absolutely.
Simple enough, 3 1/4 blade, also M390 steel on this particular one. Yeah, it's silky, it's smooth, definitely feels great.
Yeah, I have been tempted to buy this knife every time we get them in.
It's so clean.
So clean. The design is totally timeless. It's very emblematic of where this knife comes from. Right there on the Finnish-Russian border.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that Puko influence, just a little bit.
Yeah.
It's interesting because the Enzo Burke we've been talking about, it has some similarities in a way to that, and that's a straight-up bushcraft folder with a Scandi grind.
Yeah.
So it definitely has that kind of family or a geographical heritage. Yeah.
Yeah, and kind of like maybe like a Shirogorov or something. It's got that just like crystalline kind of Russian precision going on, you know?
It is. Both of these actually made in Russia, I think. Right? Aren't they?
These are made in the U.S.
Well, never mind.
But the guys who run the company, I think, are originally Russian.
Maybe there's something to there's a trend
Fact
there.
check me on that, commenters.
They will.
Okay. I don't need to ask you.
No, I'm. The more I hold these, the more I am really taken with them. And again, especially the carbon fiber with just a little hint of radius feels that much better. Very gentlemanly, very workmanlike. But like I said, I was afraid you were going to pick one of these, so I came with an alternate.
I was tempted, but this to me, I think if you're going to spend the money, it's kind of nice to get a little extra flair.
Sure.
A little extra flash.
Well, my alternate has a little bit more, and I hit it in plain view here. The Boker Boxer here. This is such a cool guy. This is like $524. This is also kind of an upgraded version of some of their less expensive models, but the Damascus here, I believe it is actually a Damasteel. I can't tell for sure, but with the red burlap, it completely won me over.
Yeah.
And there's some really nice details on here. You got that dovetailed bolster, the machining on the sides of the lock bar release.
Yeah.
It's just cool.
Very comfortable ergonomics too. This is flashy in a slightly different way.
Yeah.
A little more old school, but that Damascus is wild.
Yeah. It looks like reptile skin, basically.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. But that's not my final answer. My final answer is this guy. But yeah, that was in case that Seth had also picked the Cheburkov. No, because like you and I both appreciate like really clean lines. I was a little worried there.
I would be happy to carry that every day for sure.
Oh, I'd be very happy to carry that every day. Well, that's it for that question, but Seth and I also have an announcement, sort of a challenge we've put to ourselves based off of last week's question, where we were asked if we had $50 to buy one EDC for the rest of our life, what would it be? We each made our pick, and what we're now going to do is carry them for 30 days. By the time you see this video, we'll have been carrying them for a week, so we might check in a couple times throughout the month as we use these guys. I've got the Civivi Badlands Vagabond. Seth has the K-Bar Dozier Hunter in D2, which I guess you don't have in your pocket.
It's in my desk.
I
promise.
You're already failing the challenge. But then we'll be back at the end of the month, hopefully, with a cool video to share with you guys.
Yeah.
Showing that you could spend $500 or $50 and still have a good knife.
Absolutely.
So there you go. All right, that's about it.
Sweet.
Thanks, Seth. You can go back to sleep.
Yeah,
now
I'm gonna finish up my nap.
It's tired in here.
Standing room only.
All right, thanks, Seth, for all your help. Hope you're comfortable back there. Next question now, we're getting into our lightning round. First one from Chris Reuther. I want you guys to answer the one EDC knife under $50 question, but must be American made. So couple things. The Leak comes in about $45 for the standard version, not this blackwash version, but it's a little too slim for what I would personally want. So what I would actually do for that is I would do whatever I could to save an extra $10 and get the Buck Vantage Avid. Unfortunately, they don't make the Buck Vantage Select in the large size anymore, which came in under that $50 point, but this guy's about $60. But I've always been a fan of the shape of this knife. It's actually a really refined shape going on. Drop point's gonna do it all. Got a nice stone washed finish, which is gonna look good long term, made in the USA, as we mentioned. Pretty girthy grip, so you can get some heavier use out of it, which is where it wins a little bit over that Leak. Deep carry pocket clip as well. Only downside to these knives is they're not like the best flippers in terms of our kind of modern knowledge. Takes a little bit of breaking in, a little bit of wrist action sometimes, but the design and the utility of this knife wins out for me. So I don't know if I'd have to collect a few extra cans or, beg, borrow, and steal. Don't steal. Extra $10, that's what I would use. All right, next question comes from Guitar Tech. When you go to a nice steakhouse, do you use the cutlery on the table, or do you pull out your favorite Ginsu and start a chopping? I'm guessing serrations just aren't your thing to EDC, so you either have a special folding steak razor, or you just pick up the darn steak with two hands and start chomping. Not in polite society, I wouldn't.
You wouldn't.
Would you?
Probably.
Can't take you anywhere.
They're not letting me out much.
That's probably a good thing. If that's the kind of behavior, I can see why. I hope you spill your beans on this. I got money on this. So not often, actually it's funny, I don't actually often order a steak in a restaurant because I can actually almost always make a better steak at home. I dare say I'm pretty good at it. Unless it's like some real high-end place or you get into like the dry age stuff that I can't do, but I can make a mean steak at home, so it's usually not worth me spending the money to do it when I go out. But usually I'll just use the cutlery on the table because usually it's adequate, even if it's not like awesome. Only on rare occasions have I had to pull out something that I was carrying, in which case I didn't have something dedicated. It's just what I had on me, had to do in a pinch. One I'll share that was noteworthy just because it was so cool. My Nordsmith skipjack here. It was at SHOT Show, the beginning of 2020, I want to say. I was having dinner with Ethan Becker and Doug Ritter, and at a pretty nice restaurant, but we're all knife geeks and we're there for like knife stuff, so we all pulled out our knives to start cutting our meals with. So it was pretty cool. Doug had his folder there, Ethan was using one of his neck knives, and I was using my skipjack to cut our meat. And we all had like our own knife design, and it just felt like a real cool table to be eating food with these other cool people, and we all had our own designs doing the job. Pretty special moment when I look back on it, actually. So I don't know if that solves your bet or not, but hope that helps. Thomas, what would you do? If you were prohibited from picking it up with your hands, what would you do?
Kukri.
Tim Jackson asks, does the edge of the blade hit anything when a slip joint slams shut? I know what you're talking about. I'll bring out that case pruner again, which has that strong half stop and has a really good spring, so feels like there's a lot of force sometimes when these guys close. If the slip joint is made properly, nothing's gonna hit. If something is hitting and you're dulling your edge by closing it, something's a little off with the construction, or sometimes even the design of a certain knife. Doesn't happen often anymore, but it shouldn't do it. Next question, Joshua Cerna. Hey DCA, I'm curious if you could change the opening action / locking mechanism of any knife, which knife would it be and what would you change about it? Personally, I'd make the CJRB RIA a front flipper. Thanks, that could be pretty cool. Actually, I've got one that I've long thought about this, the Kershaw Launch 1. Love this knife. Really kind of very attractive shape. It's got something unique going on, but it's a very useful blade. Nice high flat grind, plenty of belly, very pokey as well. If you could give this to me with a crossbar lock, I would just eat it up. That'd be an instant buy for me, absolutely. CPM 154 steel, aluminum handles. If I could get that fast like Axis type action, open and close, man, I'd love that. The auto is cool, but I just can't carry it everywhere. Or as often as I might wish. So definitely. Give me a crossbar lock on the Launch 1. I'd be a happy boy. All right, Clayton Finley asks, any autos that aren't so tactical? I'd love one with wood or bone handles. Buck 110 auto. Easy answer. Very, about as untactical as it gets. Just classic folding lockback hunter. $180, made in the USA. Push button auto, but you can't close it with the push button. You still close it with the lock back there. So it's a little bit disconcerting if you're used to the push button autos, but as you can see, the push button flew that out very nicely. All right, and now we've got our most serious question for the day, and we're actually gonna kick this back to Joe Flowers again. It's a surprise question for you, Joe.
All right, we're ready.
I did not send this to Joe beforehand, so he has no idea what he's going to be getting into right here. Sorry to put you on the spot.
No worries.
But we like to close out our knife AQs with a segment we call the most serious question of the day. And today's most serious question comes from Mark Villano, who says, how much wood would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck had a really good machete?
Trying to figure out how to rhyme this. If the woodchuck is ready for a machete with his name being Eddie, it's pretty close to 3 inches per. Oh, I can't think of a time segment for that. 30 seconds per inch.
Mark Villana, I hope that enlightens what you're looking for. I hope that answers your question.
Honestly, Mark, woodchucks with machetes could be the next best thing to chainsaws. Who knows?
I can see the B-list horror movie now.
Oh gosh.
Thomas is on it.
You guys better copyright that.
Write it down. We'll mail it to ourselves. It's RIP. We came up with it right here.
Beavers with machetes. The next segment.
Awesome. Joe, thank you so much, my friend.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Mark. Thanks for everybody asking questions.
All right, folks, that's all the time I've got today to answer questions for you. Make sure to leave your questions in the comments below to get a chance to be featured in a future episode. If you want to get your hands on any of these guys, except for the modified machete there, although we'll link to our 18-inch butcher knives from them if you want to mod your own. But we're going to link to everything below so you can head over to KnifeCenter and pick one up if you'd like. And make sure you sign up for the Knife Rewards program so you can earn some free money to spend on your next set of purchases when you spend your money on one of these knives today. I'm David C. Anderson from the KnifeCenter signing off. See you next time.